on throughout the rest of Antarctica. We're a little bit unique here because it's the largest ice-free area on the continent. So it's kind of unique. So you can't extrapolate about what's going on in the bigger sense. But when you look at it in context to a lot of what else is going on in the world, or at least in Antarctica, it's very similar. On the Palmer Peninsula, that's where the most dramatic change is happening right now, the biggest warm-up. And that's kind of the way I think about it, is that has its kind of a hand out in the circumpolar area. So we're a little bit more isolated here. So what's going on here, while it has a huge impact on what happens on the rest of the planet, we are kind of isolated in some respect.
You say it has a huge impact on the, what do you mean?
Having such a large ice mass at the bottom of the Earth has a huge influence on what happens on the rest of the planet. One of the big things is that it's a large reflector of incoming energy.
That's the albedo.
That's the albedo, exactly, yeah. So as opposed to up in the northern hemisphere where you have just sea ice, the sea ice is still a big reflector, but without that you'll have ocean. And so instead of that heat just being reflected off back into the atmosphere, it'll actually be being absorbed into the ocean. Some of it will be reflected, but you'll also have that heat being put into the ocean. Having a landmass at the bottom of the continent, as you also have these circumpolar winds and oceans being driven there as well. Melt from the large ice caps influences the ocean currents by the production of deep water, Antarctic deep water. So there's all these components that are connected to this continent, and that's why the climate, what happens down here, really does have an impact on the rest of the planet. Here, it's a little bit of a different story, and we're really focused on the ecosystem that's going on right here to understand how life exists here and
so when you say
linkages.
Ecosystem, you mean life?
Yeah, yeah. To understand the life, and the life is very simple here. You're on the food chain. The kind of the lion of the food chain is a microscopic worm known as a nematode.
Down here.
Yeah. So that's what you have in here. We have skuas, which are like the large seagulls, fly in on a rare occasion. And then the only other thing that we have come in is seals occasionally get lost and come up, wander up, and usually die up here. And as well as Adelie penguins will do the same thing. And we see them all the way up, fairly far up valley. So
that seems like kind of a tiny thing to, as this little nematode, to be focusing so much energy on.
Yeah.
What's
so within the LTER, there's about 26 different sites. Most of them are located in North America. 2 are down here in Antarctica. The other one being on the Palmer Peninsula, and us being here in the McMurdo Dry Valleys. And so we're seen in the McMurdo Dry Valleys, we're seen as kind of the end member of the ecological spectrum. We're water limited, we're extremely cold, it's dark for half the year. And so that really limits on what life can happen, and it's somewhat, in comparison to the rest of the ecosystem, it's very simple. And if you can understand how the chemistry and how the geology affects the different life and the different linkages to what happened in the historical past, such as if there was a large ocean, if this was once a fjord long ago, and so there's salt water sitting in here. That has an influence on what is living out here now, and so the distribution and what is living there with other things. And then if a large ice sheet was over here, which happened a long time ago as well, what kind of influence that has on. So you could start to look at how the historical climate has an effect on what's living here now, whereas in other places it's a lot more busy, so to speak. So you could trace geochemistry, how things move through, and you could see how different species interact on a very basic level. It's not like your typical cryoconite, but we have our own hole blasted in for this one. So, and you can see just down just a little ways, there is an ice lid there that's formed either since we've been here, since I pulled that out, which I guess, yeah, I just pulled it out, so that's just formed now. And then at the bottom there, you could see the sediment that's been trapped.
So is there algae in there now, probably?
Not algae specific, but there's definitely things that are living inside there, yeah.